The first two rounds of the 2020 MotoGP Championship are completed, and boy, what a two races we've had. There have been so many talking points from the 50 laps we've completed at Jerez in race distance, so here's our top 5 things we learned in Spain. Number 1 is all about this man, the 8-time world champion Marc Marquez, who, believe it or not, is actually human. On Sunday the 19th of July, on lap 22 of the Spanish Grand Prix, Marc Marquez high-sided at turn 3 after completing a stunning comeback through the field. Unfortunately for Marc, this accident resulted in a fractured humerus and possible nerve damage. The Repsol Honda rider then flew to Barcelona, where he met with Dr. Mir and his team and underwent surgery on Tuesday the 21st of July. Just 2 days after his operation, Marc Marquez then returned to the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto and passes a medical examination, which passed him fit to ride at the Andalusia GP. Marquez and his HRC team decided to sit out Friday action and will return to the RC213V on Saturday morning. Now, Marc completed around 40 laps in both FP3 and FP4 combined, but then decided that he was not fit enough to compete in Sunday's 25 lapper, withdrawing from the weekend and getting fit for Brno. Now, no matter what you think about Marc Marquez, love him or hate him, you can't knock him for trying. His withdrawal meant that in 128 MotoGP Premier Class starts, the Spaniard has missed one Grand Prix. That's from 2013 right up until the Andalusia GP, which he obviously sat out of. That is pretty impressive, right? It puts it into even bigger perspective when you look at Marc's biggest crashes in the MotoGP class. In total, Marc Marquez has dropped his Repsol Honda 122 times. A lot of those, admittedly, being front end crashes caused by Honda's lively front end, but some of them have been massive crashes, in which Marc has got away relatively unhurt. The first few crashes that spring to mind for Marc Marquez are these. Austin 2013, he high-sided massively on corner entry when he tipped in to the end, the left-hander at the end of the back straight, which left him pretty hurt. He then went on to go and claim his first ever MotoGP Premier Class victory that weekend. In Mugello in the same year, he lost the front over the crest at Mugello at around 200 miles an hour, which slammed him into the pit wall and swole his face up and left him pretty badly battered and bruised. But that didn't stop him. He was on the grid on Sunday. Unfortunately, he did crash out of the race as well, but that was a pretty big accident that he got away lightly. Aston 2013, he had a massive high side in mixed conditions at the penultimate corner just before the chicane, went back to the medical centre and was declared fit to compete in the rest of the weekend. Silverstone 2013, Marc Marquez followed Cal Crutchlow into the gravel at the Vale chicane, dislocating his shoulder, but raced that same day and finished on the podium. Thailand 2019, now we can all remember that horrific FP1 accident which saw Marc high-side from his bike, which many of us would still be hurting today from that crash, but Marc Marquez went on to win the championship just 2 days later. Now that's pretty heroic. Finally, Sepang 2019. Now he was following eventual pole sitter Fabio Quartararo when he high-sided on turn 2 entry, landing heavily on his feet, ankles and eventually tasting the tarmac with his face. Now, despite all of these 122 crashes, it was the high side at the 2020 Spanish Grand Prix which beat Marc Marquez and proved to us that no matter how good he is on a MotoGP bike, he is in fact human. Marquez will now use this 2-week gap between the second round and the third round at Brno to make a full recovery and come back for the Czech Grand Prix. The second thing we learned from our trip to Spain is that despite winning both races, leading the Riders, Teams and Constructors Championship, Yamaha are nowhere near safe. The issues once again lie in their engine department, but this time it isn't top speed that's worrying the Iwata manufacturer. In MotoGP, you have two types of teams. You have teams with no concessions, which are the 2 Yamaha bikes, Monster and Petronas, the 3 Ducatis, the Suzuki and the LCR and Repsol Hondas of Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, Cal Crutchlow and Takaki Nakagami. You then have teams with concessions, which are KTM and Aprilia, and they get extra engine allowance, extra development time and a little bit more goodies that they can continue to develop their bike throughout the season. Now for a non-concession team like Yamaha, their maximum engine allowance has been cut to 5 for the shortened 2020 season and has been sealed from Qatar test. Now 5 engines to use in a shortened calendar sounds a lot, right? Well, what if I were to tell you that one of the 4 Yamaha riders on the grid has already used all 5? Valentino Rossi has used 4 engines already, one of which has been removed from the allocation and sent to Japan for inspection following his retirement from round 1. So effectively, after 2 races, the Doctor has 1 fresh engine remaining. On the other side of the Monster Energy Yamaha garage, Maverick Vinales is in much deeper waters. Now Maverick has used all 5 of his engines, and like Valentino, his second engine has been sent to Japan for inspection. Now this means that Maverick Vinales could face grid penalties or even a pit lane start should he exceed the 5 engine limit. At Petronas, things aren't too much better. Championship leader Fabio Quartararo has used 4 engines, whilst Franco Morbidelli has also used 4 engines, one of which failed in similar fashion to Valentino's in round 1. Now with Marc Marquez not scoring any points, Ducati struggling it seems on the new Michelin rear tyre, this is Yamaha's golden chance to claim their second title since Marquez's arrival back in 2013, but could the engine penalties hold them back? The next thing we learned from our 2 Spanish Grand Prix are these 3 men here and how impressive the MotoGP rookies were in 2020. Brad Binder, Iker Lecuona and Alex Marquez. Now, Brad Binder obviously riding for the factory KTM. He had a bit of a difficult weekend in the races. His weekend pace in practice and qualifying, absolutely unreal. He ended the session inside the top 3 at one point, and he was always there or thereabouts inside that top 10 and managed to set a race pace in the first race after running off the track at turn 5 that would have actually put him on the podium. And the same was said in the second race after dropping way down the order after the first lap collision with Miguel Oliveira at turn 1. But Brad then raced on before he crashed out in the second race and was setting exactly the same lap times as race leader Fabio Quartararo. So Red Bull KTM have got to be impressed with Brad's form despite unfortunately picking up very small amount of points in the first 2 races, and obviously their progress as well, as a manufacturer, who have also made very big progress. Now, moving on to the other KTM, the Tech 3 KTM rider Iker Lecuona. He had a difficult weekend as well. He retired from both races. He pulled out of the first one with heat stroke, and the second race he crashed out. But like Brad, he was showing good pace. He was thereabouts fighting for the top 10 positions throughout practice and qualifying. But unfortunately, as the old saying goes, you don't score points for practice or qualifying. Sunday is where the points are at. Now, Alex Marquez is arguably the most impressive rookie for me. He's riding the arguably the hardest bike on the grid, the bike that his brother obviously sent to space on Sunday afternoon in the first race. Now, Alex picked up 2 good results. He got points in both races. His best result coming at the Andalucía GP in P8, thanks to obviously a couple of retirements ahead. But Alex made progress. He's doing much better in my opinion than Lorenzo was. He's making really good progress on that bike, and I'm looking forward to continue seeing him making progress as the season goes on. So definitely after this weekend, these 3 riders are definitely ones to watch over the course of the 2020 season. The 4th thing we learned from the 2 races in Spain is that there is still life in the old dog, and as it turns out, you can teach old dogs new tricks. Since his win at Jerez in 2016, Valentino Rossi has struggled to trouble the top 5 at Jerez, and that was the same in the first of the 2 visits this year. However, Rossi was one of the few riders to benefit from the back-to-back Jerez Grand Prix. The Doctor demanded Yamaha to work in his way, something that he has apparently been trying to since mid-2017. For the first time in a long while, we saw Valentino Rossi fighting at the front of a MotoGP race. Alright, his pace dropped away towards the end, losing the position in the final 2 laps to teammate Maverick Vinales after both factory bikes were promoted to the podium positions following Pecco and Franco Morbidelli's retirements a little bit earlier on in the race. But Valentino Rossi was competitive once again at a track that he hasn't been competitive in, like I said, since that victory in 2016. And in a 60-degree track temperature heat, I'd love to know what it was that Valentino Rossi changed to get that Michelin rear tyre to last and to work the way that he wanted it to. I don't think Yamaha, however, are going to come out and openly admit that it was their fault all along, but Valentino Rossi and Yamaha now need a competitive weekend in Brno to confirm that the changes that he and his crew chief David Munoz made to his YZR M1 do in fact work, and it wasn't just a fluke at the Jerez circuit. Now, after waiting 18 races to stand on the Grand Prix podium once again, Rossi became the first rider to stand on the podium in 25 consecutive years. Try and beat that one, Marc Marquez. The final thing that we learned from the MotoGP weekend at Jerez is that, in fact, the heat causes issues, not only for the riders, but for the bikes. Now, could you imagine riding a Moto2 race in second position in clear air because Enea Bastianini had opened up the gap to Luca Marini, and the Italian looks at his dashboard and sees 100°C reading for his cooling system. Now, his Sky VR46 Calyx was running at 100 degrees. Now, could you imagine Maverick Vinales or Pecco Bagnaia Morbidelli, who were all locked together on track, running in the hot dirty air of each other's bikes? Your hands are getting red hot, your feet are getting red hot, your bike is overheating, the front tyre is overheating, the back tyre is screaming. Could you imagine doing that for 25 laps on what was a 60-degree track surface? No, I couldn't either. Now, we saw a lot of retirements. So we saw Valentino Rossi retire in race 1. We saw Iker Lecuona retire due to heat stroke in race 1. And then Pecco's engine went and Morbidelli's engine went in the second race. And there was more retirements throughout the weekend as well in practice qualifying and also in the Moto3 and Moto2 races. Now, the question remains as to whether or not this will prove to be a problem throughout the remainder of the season. Now, Yamaha's engine issues could be to what we spoke about a little bit earlier on in the video. Their actual engine is unreliable, or it could be down to the heat, causing issues with sensor readings, for example, and it puts the bike into limp mode or something like that. Pecco's was more of an engine failure. It was more of an oil leak. It looked like there was blue smoke pouring from the back of his Pramac Racing Ducati, which unfortunately denied him of his first ever MotoGP podium, which would have been absolutely awesome for the Italian. But now we're going to Brno. We're going to Brno at a similar time as what we would do normally, as are Misano and Aragon and Valencia. Now, the thing is, we're going to these tracks in a normal time. Jerez we normally go to at May, before the real heat of the summer picks up. Now, racing in July, arguably nearly at the peak of summertime in Spain, it's going to be very hot. Now, I'm not surprised that the engines were running at 100 degrees because it was really that warm. But the question lies, like I said, is it the heat, or is this shortened season going to prove a little bit like the F1 race at Austria, the first race of the season, when all the cars hadn't been running a long time and they all ended up retiring, well, a lot of them retired or had some sort of reliability issue. I'm wondering, is that the same for MotoGP? Will we have a similar repeat in Brno, or will it be a little bit better? That's going to be exciting to see. So that has been our top 5 moments from the Spanish Grand Prix. Do you have any more moments that stands out for you? Drop them down in the comments. We'd love to hear them. I'm going to leave you now with the MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 and Moto E Championship standings. It's Fabio Quartararo, Tetsuta Nagashima, Alberto Lenas and Dominic Agata, who go into Brno as their respective championship leaders. Will it all change in Czech Republic in 2 weeks' time? I think so, but we'll have to wait and see. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.